I can't go on camera. And yes, you can.
Hmm.
You can do it. If you want to do it in your business, then you can do it. You can do anything.
Hello and welcome to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie, aka your business bestie. I teach female coaches, speakers, and course creators to release procrastination and perfection so that they can get more done, book more clients, and have the time freedom that all entrepreneurs crave. This is not your typical business coaching podcast. We're talking about business, life, probably some wooey magic, and probably some singing or referencing song lyrics along the way. So if you're into business building, making more money, and getting a little bit of a mindset shift along with having a good laugh, you're definitely in the right place. I've grown 3 businesses from $0 to consistent 4 and 5 figure months over the last 15 plus years. And now I'm helping you do the same thing. It didn't happen overnight, and it certainly didn't happen without the help of others. They say it takes a village to raise children, and I believe it takes a village to grow a business as well. So in this podcast, you'll find people who help you grow your village, cheer you on, as well as holding you accountable. I'm so excited you're here, and I can't wait for you to listen to each episode. Let's dive in. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie. I am your business bestie. And today I am here with Jamie, and she is going to tell you who she is and who she serves.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me, Maggie. As she said, my name is Jamie Hayen, and I am what is called a get on camera coach. What that means is that I help people like you stop hiding, dreading, avoiding that camera and get going doing live videos, showing your face, getting visible as an opportunity to grow your business. So I work with people who, I mean, just to sum it up, I would say if you look at your feed, on any platform and it's photos and graphics and text, but no videos, you're my person.
Awesome. I love that. That is so good. It's so important. I know I definitely probably could have used you a few years ago when I was like, I don't want to show my face on social media ever.
You are not alone. There are a lot of people like you. It's like
Oh.
it's just it can be scary. I get that. And
Mhm.
not only scary just from like a visibility, vulnerability perspective, but like where do I look and what do I talk about? And so there's some mechanics in there too, right?
Right. Yes, absolutely. And I think, now that we are in a much more digital world, right? Like
Right.
Zoom is a big thing. I know my husband, when he started working from home a few years ago during the pandemic, he was like, I keep my camera off at all times. I don't want to be on camera. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why? And he's like, because there's kids in the background and there's this and there's that. And I was like, well, everyone's at home.
I,
Everyone's
I
got stuff in the background. So
exactly.
I don't
I
know.
will say, I mean, the pandemic has been awful for so many reasons, but if there's one positive thing that came out of it, it's what you just described. People
Yeah.
are so much more forgiving because
Yes.
they've been there, right? They've
Hmm.
had the kid come in screaming and crying while they were on Zoom, or the doorbell ring and the dog goes. Everybody's experience. So there's just a whole lot more acceptance and forgiveness for the oopsies that happen.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I am so thankful for that as well, right? Like just knowing that it brings us just a little bit more realness and more like
Yeah.
human factor. And it takes that stuff off of this, pedestal of like, oh my gosh, everything has to be perfect and I have to look perfect. And no, you don't. Because I would argue that most people, they want they want to see your flaws. They want to know that you're like a real person, right? They don't want like when you show up and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I look da 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 today." And like you are probably the only one that sees those flaws.
That's exactly right. I say that all the time to my clients. People want what you have. They want what's in your mind. They want what's in your heart. They want how you entertain them, how you educate them, all of those things. They could care less what your hair looks like. They could
Yes.
care less if you got mascara on or not. They don't care. And I think the pandemic and honestly, YouTube and TikTok and all of the craze that's out there right now, people don't want an overproduced video. They just
Right.
want real life. Like talk
Yes.
to me like a real person. Let's connect like real people. That's I know that's what I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, same. Same.
Yeah.
I would rather just show up as myself in, like a crazy mom bun and probably a
Yeah.
sweatshirt that I've been wearing for the past like 5 days because I mean, it's winter in Wisconsin. So it is what it
Exactly. And honestly, being comfortable
is.
means so much more. At least for me, if I'm not comfortable, I mean, I spent years and years in corporate, and I can remember wearing suits that were uncomfortable. And you're like, how are you
Mhm.
going to be engaging and able to connect with people when you're miserable because of the
Yes.
coat you're wearing or the whatever else it is. So I'm a big fan of comfort.
Yes. Oh, same. That's so awesome. So, my first question for you today is how long have you been an entrepreneur and what has your journey been? I know you just said you were in corporate for a little while, so or maybe a long while, I don't know. So tell us some of your journey from corporate to entrepreneur and where you're at today.
It has been a long while. I spent I can't even believe I'm going to say this number out loud because every time I say it, I think I am not this old. I spent 25 years in corporate America.
Okay.
Most of that time was in learning and development. So I helped train new hires, new salespeople, leaders, et cetera, on whatever the training of the day was, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
For anybody who's been in corporate, oh, I mean, you were in corporate.
Yep.
It can be a grind, and it's not for everyone. And I was finding myself in many situations where I wasn't. Like, we were just talking about being authentic and being real.
Mm-hmm.
I was faking my way through that because it wasn't me. I didn't want to be this person, right? And one day, out of the blue, well, it wasn't out of the blue. I came. It was one of many days where I went home crying, right?
Uh-huh.
And I walked in the house, and I remember my husband said, "What is wrong?" And I said, "I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. It's so awful." And he said, "Then don't." And I was like, "Just like that?" And he's like, "Just like that." And so, like, the following Monday, I put in my notice, and that was it. I didn't have a job, Maggie. I had no job. I had nowhere to go. I didn't even know what I was going to do. And so for a while, I helped my husband with his business. And then on a whim, we said, let's take off. And so we took a RV trip for a year, and it was fantastic. I highly recommend if anybody has ever dreamed of doing it, it is so worth it.
Yeah.
And when I got back to the real world, what do? You got to get a job. So I hired a coach to help me get my resume ready to go on LinkedIn because that's where you get a job.
Yep.
And my second session, she said, I get the feeling you don't want to do this. And I said, you're darn right. I don't want to do this. I don't want to go back into what made me miserable before.
Right.
And she said, well, why don't you be a coach? And I said, a what? What are you talking about? And she said, well, there's this whole world. And I'm telling you, Maggie, my head exploded. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know any of these people were out there doing this, having online businesses, doing all this awesome stuff. And so that homework that night was not anything to do with my resume or my LinkedIn profile. It was go and watch these people and see what you think. And I was blown away. And I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
have to be somehow, some way, I have to be part of this. And
Mm-hmm.
so, fast forward, I decided to leverage what am I good at? What was I good at in corporate? What were the things that I loved about that job? And how do I create a coaching business around it? And what I love doing is helping people present their ideas,
Mm-hmm.
present their thoughts, share their own brilliance, their own messages. And so I became a get on camera coach, and I help people do that through video. And,
Yeah.
you asked, how long have I been in business? That's a tricky question because I have been in business. My first business was 4 years ago.
Okay.
And then in the middle, we took another RV trip because it was so much fun and we loved it so much. And so I just restarted again for the second time back in September of last year. So in total, 4 years. This round, what is that? Let's see here, 6 months,
Uh-huh.
something like that. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that's been my
That's so,
journey.
I love that. That's so cool. I think, one of my favorite things about this whole podcast experience is just meeting different people and getting to hear their stories. And so much of your story just aligns with what happened to me, right? Like I was in a corporate job and I hated it and I wanted out. And I had a really crappy review one day, one December, and I literally went in 2 days later and I was like, I'm done. Bye.
Wow. Bye.
Bye.
Peace
Uh
out.
I don't know what you're doing without me, but good luck. Good luck. And like and I left. And at that point in time, I had a photography business that was going
Yeah.
well. So I had a plan-ish, but there was always that like, oh my gosh, I just left what we're conditioned to think is a stable job, right?
Yes.
The corporate is stable. But once I left, I realized that like they did replace me. They replaced me with 4 people, but they
Oh,
replaced me.
you're kidding. Oh my gosh. What?
So when I caught wind that they had to have 4 people step in to do my job, I was like, well,
That what a
props,
message that sends to you. Oh
props
my
to me.
gosh. Wow. That's great. But okay, let me ask you this. I know you're interviewing me, but here I am asking you a question.
Yeah.
When you actually put in your notice, right? And
Mhm.
you're like, peace out, I'm done. Could you just feel the stress just like, I mean, it just all of a sudden it's just not there. It's not heavy on your
Mhm.
back anymore. It was,
Yep.
isn't it the craziest feeling? Aren't you like, oh, so this is what it's supposed to feel like?
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah.
It felt like the weight of the world was just removed from my shoulders,
Yes.
and like I could breathe again.
Yep.
Like I had a clearer head. I wasn't worried about going to work. I wasn't worried about, oh, am I going to have enough work to do today? Because that
Right.
was my problem, is I was so far ahead and I had things, like situated in such a way that a lot of it was automated, so I didn't have to touch a lot of it. That I was like twiddling my thumbs doing nothing, and then I was getting in trouble for doing nothing, but I had no work to do. So I'm like, I can't, what,
You
I
can't
don't know what
win.
to do.
You
I
can't
can't win.
win. No, I know.
Right,
I've been
right.
there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of my coworkers said to me, well, what are you going to do when this photography business falls through? You're going to come crawling
Oh,
back to corporate. And I was like,
mm-mm,
no,
not an
because
option.
I get to call the shots, and I get to decide what is quote unquote working or what is, not working. And I don't necessarily see failures as things that aren't working, or that are like failures aren't they're not a thing, right? It's just it didn't work out the way I wanted it to, so I had to pivot to do something else.
They're opportunities. They're
Right.
opportunities to say, okay, how am I going to do this better or different? For
Yes.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And in 2020, when I closed the yoga studio, again, I had a lot of people say to me, "Oh, your yoga studio failed. Are you going back to corporate now?" And it's like,
No.
"No. Why would I go back to corporate when I can step into coaching?" Right? Because, similar to you, I had hired a business coach to help me with the yoga studio.
Yeah.
She did. She helped me get it from, like $1,000 a month to like consistent $5,000 to $8,000 months.
That's
And
awesome.
like I saw that and I knew the possibility. I also knew my own possibilities from, teaching others to run businesses, to run yoga businesses. So, I'm like, no, I'm going to be a coach now. And I had a couple of people, tell me like, oh, switching jobs again, huh? And I'm like, no, pivoting. The photo business is still to this day running, right? Like I still take photos, and I love that. I love that that is a very creative, artistic piece of me that I can still exercise. It makes money and I don't have to really touch it. People
Yeah.
come to me because I've been around for 15 years. They Google me and I pop up and they book. And that's great. And now with the coaching business, I get to help so many more people do the same thing, right? I get to help them understand what they're doing, navigate business, and turn the chaos of business into clarity so that they can get more clients and make more money.
I love it.
Yeah. All right. So my next question you kind of answered it with the first one. But what is something challenging that you've overcome in business? Now, this could be as you were shifting from entrepreneur or from corporate to entrepreneur, or just in your entrepreneur, but something challenging that kind of stood out to you that you've overcome.
Oh, that is a great question. I have two thoughts, but I'm gonna go with the first one. As I said earlier, I started my business, it was going well, and then we took a break and we did a second RV trip. Well, in that break, when I came back, someone had swooped in and I'm gonna say borrowed, but they stole it, my business name,
Uh-huh.
and had taken it as their own and had trademarked it as their own. So my bad. I didn't trademark it in the first place. But
Uh-huh.
now here I am restarting a business, the same business. I have to come up with a new name. That's not that big of a deal. I'm a creative person,
Sure.
but the challenge is everything that I had that already existed had that branding.
Mm-hmm.
Every video,
Oh.
every social media post, every workbook, every it's everywhere. And you don't stop and think about, if you love your brand and you put it all over the place, how much work it is if you suddenly have to change it.
Right.
It there were moments, I'm not going to lie, Maggie, where I wanted to just cry in my bed and say, I give up, I can't do this. And I
Mm-hmm.
think many entrepreneurs face that. It may not be this exact situation, but you face that point where you're like, I can't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you can. You can push through anything. You are tough enough. I mean, my goodness, you have your own business. You can do it.
Right.
You just got to break it down, right? It seems like this monumental task. How am I ever gonna get through all of this, whatever this is? But you just break it down to the task level. Here are all the steps and parts and pieces that I got to get through, and then you just go after them. It's like that saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Right.
And no matter how big the task seems, how daunting it seems, you push through it. Now, like I said, there were a couple days there where I was like, no, I can't do it. And I honestly felt like I lost a little piece of my soul. Like I was so connected to my brand
Mm-hmm.
and the name, and I thought, I can't do this if I can't be that.
Right.
And then I just, I looked at it and I thought, kind of like we were just talking about, I looked at it as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to rebrand. It's an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to come back bigger and bolder and learn from my past mistakes and do things different. And oftentimes in business, you don't have the opportunity always to just restart right in the
Right.
middle. And I
Yep.
did. So, you find the positive side to whatever challenge is in your way and you push through it. And that's what I did.
Yeah. I love that because I definitely know, just 15 years of business for, like all of my businesses combined, there were plenty of times, especially after I left corporate, where I would get up and I would be like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I can't do this. What was I thinking? I just need to go lay down for a minute,
Yeah.
right? And I think,
Well, yeah. I was just
some
going to
of
say
that,
the worst thought in
yeah,
there is when you go, maybe they're all right. Maybe I should just
yeah,
go back to corporate, right? And
yes.
then you catch yourself and you're like, no, that's not the
Hmm.
answer. But I'm
Right.
sorry. Keep telling your
No,
story.
and I think like sometimes when you take the time to slow down and like feel the feelings, because if you don't take time to feel those feelings and you just kind of push them to the side, they're always going to be there, right?
Yes.
But if you take the time to feel them and like sit in that and like, I mean, wallow in your miseries, right?
Yeah,
Like you have to do a little bit of that in order
you
to
do.
like make your way through the muck. So, I would argue the hardest part is like getting through the muck, right? It's easy to get in
Yeah.
there, easy to get in the weeds, and it's
Yeah.
easy to get stuck. And like making your way through that is where all of that transformation comes.
Yeah.
And, a lot of the clients that I have helped, they're in the muck, they're in those weeds, and they're like, I think I got to go back to corporate. I don't think this is
Yeah.
working, right? And then I'm able to come in and say, no, no, here, take my hand. I'll help you through, right? Yeah, you might lose your shoe in the mud and the muck, but we'll get you new shoes. So don't worry.
Yeah.
Like, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
So having that accountability, that coaching, is just so powerful for people when they
Yeah.
get to that other side and they're like, oh wow, okay, all right, I can do
Yeah.
this. I made it through. I feel like I'm on top of the world. And I feel empowered.
Yeah. When you can reflect back on how you move through a challenge, it does feel empowering because you're like, I
Hmm.
did that. Like most
Right.
people would have folded under that pressure and I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally agree with you. I usually, whenever I found myself stuck, I give myself a time limit. And I'm like,
Right.
okay,
Yes.
you can be upset for 24 hours and be
Uh-huh.
you can cry, you can curse, you can do whatever, but but in that 24 hour, then that's it. The time limit is up and now it's time to take action. And
Yes.
but I agree, it's a powerful part of that process to feel it, to feel what you're feeling. There's a
Mm-hmm.
feeling wheel. Do you know the
Right.
feeling wheel? Have you seen the
Yes.
feeling wheel? It's
Yeah.
so
I
I
I
love
have
it.
a 5-year-old, so yes,
Okay, yes, you do.
we have a feeling wheel.
I had a friend who's like, you need to get your feeling wheel out and you need to figure out what the feeling is. It really does work. And for those of you that don't know, it's like a imagine concentric circles, and in the middle, or maybe it's the outer circle. I can't remember which way it goes. It's the very basic
Mm-hmm.
feelings, right? Mad, sad, angry, happy, whatever. But
Yep.
then you drill down and you really get down to the exact emotion that you're feeling. And once you label it, once you know it, I don't know, there's, again, I'm going to use your word, empowering. Now that you've named it and you know, this is what I'm feeling, it's easier to get out of the muck when you know it's
Mm-hmm.
named.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's easier to ask for help when you
Yes.
know what you're feeling, right? Like if I know I'm mad, I can usually tell you what I'm mad about. And if
Right.
I know what I'm mad about, that helps me navigate how to get unmad, right? Like
Yes.
how to stop being mad, right? Like, okay, I need to change the situation that I'm in, and that will help me not be upset. And right? Like, so just moving
Yes.
through that. And I think a lot of people, well, they get stuck there, right? You get stuck in all those feelings and you're like, I feel so many things that I don't know what to feel. And I don't, right? Everyone's telling me that I should feel happy. Every entrepreneur is like, just feel happy, just blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, you can't only ever feel happy. We are meant to feel a lot of feelings. So feel the
Yes.
feelings and like, let's move through them, and let me help you with ways to move through those feelings and give you tools so that you don't get stuck in those feelings.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's the truth about being an entrepreneur. No, it's probably the truth that people don't tell you, right? Everybody wants to
Right.
dreams of having their own business, but the hard part of being an entrepreneur is what you just described. And it's
Mm-hmm.
super hard because you're alone in it. And unless you have a coach like you or a mentor or somebody else, a bestie, like you said,
Right.
it can get really lonely and it can be hard and it can be easy to get stuck.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. So, my next question for you is, what is one piece of advice that you would tell your younger self? So, this could be you 4 years ago, this could be you 20 years ago, whatever it is. What's one piece of advice?
I tell my younger self this all the time because I think my younger self is my client
Mm-hmm.
and that is the very first time. So I spent all those years in corporate, in front of people, big
Mm-hmm.
audiences, thousands and thousands of people, and the very first time I ever went live, on a platform, I went and hid in my bed for 2 hours afterwards, slammed the laptop down, and ran and hid. Okay. 2 hours I laid there under the covers, worrying and obsessing, and I call them the what ifs, all the
Uh-huh.
what ifs in your mind. What if this is happening? What if they're laughing at me? What if they're judging me? What if nobody's watching? What if nobody tuned in? What if, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so 2 hours later, I get up and I, creep out and I look at the laptop, just cringing for the worst possible scenario, all the scenarios that I had been imagining in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing, none of that has happened, right? Everybody was super supportive. I had great comments. And in that moment I was like, self, you are never allowed to do that again. No more hiding, no more hiding. Stop hiding.
Mm-hmm.
For all of the reasons, all those what ifs. And we talked about them earlier. I'm not dressed right. I don't, I've got bad skin. I don't like my hair. I haven't done my hair. I don't like wearing makeup. I don't, my hair's in what'd you call it earlier? A mom bun,
Yeah, mom
right?
bun.
I'm wearing a sweatshirt that's 5 days old. I can't go on camera. And yes, you can.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it. If you want to do it in your business, then you can do it. You can do anything. Don't
Mm-hmm.
let your own mind be the thing that stops you.
Right.
Um, and what I tell my clients is the same advice I will share today. That voice in your head, name her, or him. Maybe it's a dragon. I don't know what it is, but that voice in your head, give it a name
Mm-hmm.
so that when that voice in your head starts and telling you all the what ifs, you can tell her to shut up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier to tell the voice in my head, I named her Gertrude. And
Mm-hmm.
so when Gertrude starts in, I say, Gertrude, no more, shut up. And it
Uh-huh.
works. It's so much easier to tell Gertrude to shut up than it is to compete with myself and
Right.
compete with my own head. So, my advice to my younger self, besides naming the voice in your head, is to quiet the voice by yelling at her and believe in yourself. Don't believe in
Mm-hmm.
that voice. Ignore her. Tell her where her place is. You can do this. Stop hiding. You can do it.
Right. Ah, yes. I love that so much, and like if you get into some of that like sciencey,
Yeah,
brainy stuff, right? Like the
right.
science behind that little voice that behind Gertrude is that she's trying to keep you safe, right?
Safe.
She's trying to
Yes.
keep you safe
Protect
because
you.
right, like way back in the day when we were
I know.
Neanderthals, right, like the
It
threat was
protect you
that
from the
yeah,
saber-toothed tigers.
yes, you were
Yes.
going to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, so don't do
No.
dumb things.
That's right.
Right? So now
Yes.
we don't really have that threat anymore. So like the biggest threat is like embarrassment, like social embarrassment, which
Exactly.
is not fun, but also, like I promise you most people are more concerned about themselves than you. I,
For
I promise.
sure. For sure. And here's the thing. I tell my clients this all the time. And I learned this from somebody on LinkedIn and I cannot remember who it was at all. So if you're listening and this is yours, I'm totally giving you credit. You just need to reach out and tell me it was yours. But the key to success is this. Are you ready for it, Maggie?
Uh-huh.
Start, suck, get better.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is most people don't start because they don't want to suck.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
when it sucks, we've been just talking about this whole time. When it sucks, they give up or they
Right.
quit. So
Yep.
you got to go through it and you got to learn from the things that challenge you. And, like you said, if you, let's say you do a video and it's horrible and it stinks and maybe you get some trolls, you learn from that and you move on and you do it again and
Right.
you get better and you learn from your mistakes and you say, oh, I'm going to say that again. But you just keep pushing forward because the only
Mm-hmm.
way out is through.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I've also had other people say to me that like if you don't have haters, then you're not going hard enough. You're not
Yeah,
showing up enough. So, you know, people who are haters, they're probably insecure with themselves, right? And
they
they
are.
probably like they're jealous of you and they want what you're doing. And like, okay, that's fine. You want to hate, okay, you can ignore those people and again like work through those emotions of people being like, oh, you're terrible, but whatever the trolls and haters are going to say, right? Whatever, because I promise they probably want exactly what you're doing. They want to
That's
be
right.
brave, they want to show up, they want to get on camera and they want to be able to have their own business, and they probably see you as very successful, um because I feel like we don't give ourselves enough credit for what we're doing sometimes, right? Like
Yeah.
I help, one of the local high schools has a class called Incubator and they get to grow a business. So they start a
How
business from
fun.
idea and take it into fruition. And every year that I've helped the kids each year, they've always asked me, how did you get so successful? And the first time they asked me that, I was like,
Me? Who are you talking
what?
about?
Who are you
What?
talking
What?
about? Who,
Me?
what? And they're like, well,
Yeah.
you've been in business since before I was alive. And I'm like,
Oh, no.
this is also a very weird, like, I can't be that old. I thought
No,
I
like
just,
I remember being in these seats. When did
right?
this happen?
I,
Yeah, yeah.
anyway, so, like, that's what they said to me this year. Well, you've been in business longer than I've been alive. So, and I'm like,
Oh, ouch.
what? No.
Is
Isn't
that
it like,
possible? Where's my calculator?
right? I
Okay. Yeah.
know. But that really kind of got me to think about some of the roads that I've traveled and how that can truly help people and how
Yeah.
that can, just spark something. And hopefully that, I think the statistic of like people who start a business and then it fails or they stop is like 80% of
Yeah.
people, which is crazy, right? Like I
Crazy.
don't want to see that happening anymore. So
And and again, I don't know this statistic, but like even the people who have the most successful businesses, when you dig into it, it's like their fifth business. They had
mhm,
four other businesses prior to this one, all
yep,
failed, but they
right.
kept going. That
Yes.
that was the difference. And they learned from their mistakes.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. That's such a good piece of advice. So, my last question for you today is if you were a kitchen utensil or gadget, what would you be and why?
Oh, a kitchen gadget. And I love to cook. So I'm like mentally my brain, I'm going through all of my tools and I'm thinking,
Uh-huh.
what is the best one out there? Oh, how do you pick just one? This is always hard for me. Anytime you have to pick like a favorite anything, even like your
Uh-huh.
favorite food, I
Yeah.
I freeze. I can't do it. It's like I'm gonna hurt the feelings of the kitchen utensils that I don't pick by picking one.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so it's a toss up. My reason why will explain. It's a toss up between a blender or like a
Mhm.
hand mixer,
Okay.
or like even like a KitchenAid mixer,
Yep.
because I like to mix it up. I like
Uh-huh.
to challenge your thinking, and I like to. I'm not one of those coaches who says this is the way you must do it. Now I give
Mhm.
models, just like I'm sure you do,
Yep.
but I want to find a way that works for you and who you are and how you like to work and how you like to operate. And
Mhm.
so it's kind of like a mixer where you're going to throw a little bit of this in and throw a little bit of this in, and you're going to whip it all together to come up with the batter that's going to make, the cake. I would be a KitchenAid mixer. Did you?
That's awesome. I love that. Yes, that's one of my favorite questions to ask, and I knew I needed to like include it somehow in this podcast, right?
It's
Because
so fun.
it's so fun, and I just
It's
feel
so
like
fun.
it's such a good way to get you like out of the like, oh, I have to talk about business. I can only
Right.
talk about this. And like being in business, being an entrepreneur is so much more than just business. There's so many things that come together. So
It really is. It really is
awesome.
so, so true.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. So, Jamie, go ahead and tell everyone how they can connect to you and what's the best way to get in contact with you.
I would say of all the different platforms, I'm probably most active on Facebook. So find me on Facebook. I love the Facebook Messenger. I love to DM, so you can always reach me there. The spelling of my name is the tricky thing, right? Both names are tricky, and both names are often spelled wrong. So people add letters, they mix the letters around. So be careful there if you're listening. But if you want a place to go where you can link to everything, it would be my website, which is just Jamie Hayen Coaching. So obviously spelling is also important there. But jamiehayencoaching.com is going to be a place to get access to everything, or at least a place to
Yay.
start. Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds good. And I'll link all that
Oh,
stuff in the
perfect. There you
show
go.
notes. So, if you're driving or can't write things down right now, you'll have the link below. Jamie, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast with me today. I am so excited for everyone to hear our interview.
Me too. Thanks for having me. This was so much fun. I loved it. Thanks, Maggie.
Wow, what a great interview. Thank you so much for showing up here on the Chaos to Clarity podcast. Again, my name is Maggie. I'm so excited to connect with you. You can find all of the information, all of the links below in the show notes for today's interview. And I hope you have the best day ever.